mixture like sun lays me down. With my mind she runs throughout the night. No need to fight, never a frown, with golden brown. Every time, just like the last.
Cigarette? I spun around facing the messenger who silently had returned from the bunker. My reverie was over. Thanks, I lighted a match for him, cupping the flame. For the first time I could see the features more closely. He had a pleasant, clean-shaven young face and light hair. He was only 2 or 3 years older than I, but looked seasoned. Under his half-open parka, I could see the ribbon of the Iron Cross. Welcome again, he said in his soft way of speaking that I'd become accustomed to. You know, it's the heavy machine gun company of our battalion that you're going to, the 14th. The gun I'll bring you to is integrated in the sector of the other mountain infantry regiment in our division, pretty near the Ivan, hardly 150 meters distant. Over there is our company command post. He continued, pointing in the direction opposite the Mungo emplacement. The chief wants to see you in the morning. I'll take you there. Turning ahead, he pointed to the left. Over there is a lake. That's where the sector of our regiment ends towards the north. On the other side of the lake, the positions of our sister regiment begin, stretching farther up to the north and ending nowhere in the swamps and lakes with only some strong points. That's the north flank, which was a common expression with us. And over there to the right runs the road to Luki. The road, as we call it. That's where other parts of our regiment are positioned, on both sides of it. I nodded to all he said, but I must have looked somewhat perplexed. I had understood nothing. All I could perceive was that the division's positions were concealed somewhere in the snow-covered, thinly wooded environment. You'll figure it out for yourself before long, he said. We put our cigarettes out. Let's go, and be quiet. There are snipers over there, even when it's dark. He went ahead along a path up the hill. Suddenly I heard a pistol shot. A flare hissed skyward, quivering high above the ground and casting a tremulous white magnesium light over the sparse birch trees and conifers. Black stripes shaded the snow. Both of us stood frozen on the flat top of the hill, he from experience and I from awe. Now I could see that the slope ended in a depression which extended toward a hill opposite ours. I tried in vain to discover the enemy positions the messenger said were only 150 meters away. The flare went out and another soared up. At that moment, further down on our side, a machine pistol opened up, firing 2 short bursts. Then the sustained fire of a machine gun followed. Immediately all hell broke loose. From the opposite hill, 2 machine guns opened fire. To the left, another one of our machine guns joined in. I remained standing upright in the shade of a tree, just as if I were a bystander, uninvolved in what was happening in front of us, only that there were strange sounds all around me. Take cover, hit the ground, man, the messenger shouted. He was lying flat in a small hollow. I came down the same second, suddenly realizing that we were amidst the scattered fire of a Russian machine gun that was raking the surface of the hill and hitting the trunks with sharp smacks. It dawned on me that I had just escaped an early death, a stupid and entirely useless one. Welcome to the Hexes and Soldiers show, Series 2, Episode 1. My name is Jason, and that was an excerpt from Black Edelweiss, a memoir of combat and conscience by a soldier of the Waffen SS by Johann Voss. Mr. Johann Voss, of course, writing under a moniker that is not his real name. We'll be getting more into that as the show goes on, but that is a quick initial excerpt from the book. And welcome to the show, everybody. The song you heard prior to the reading was Gold and Brown by the Stranglers. And Stranglers from England, I think early 70s. If you're not familiar with them, check them out. Pretty good stuff. The song arguably is a reference to either a girl or heroin. Isn't that always the case? It's either drugs or a woman, or I don't know. They both seem to mesh together somehow when it comes to the rock and roll, but a good song, and I'd forgotten about that until recently. Also thought it would be suitable for the fall weather that is upon us. The golden brown leaves that fall to our feet. Summer is no more, and I say good riddance. Not a fan of the summer, and I understand it has a lot of good denotation for many of you out there. That's fine, not me. All it really means for me is heat. So with summer on its way out, that means the cooler air is on its way in. Also, with fall comes hockey, so hey, why wouldn't I be excited for the fall season? In fact, I just threw down a handsome sum of money so I could watch all the NHL games. I don't have satellite, I don't have cable, nor do I have Hulu, um, HBO, Netflix, any of that stuff. But I will throw down some money for the hockey. In fact, I don't even own a TV, so I'll be watching as I want to do anything worth watching on my little computer here, which is on the game table, strewn with many, many abandoned projects, midway played games, and just tons of odds and ends. I need to clean this thing. But that was my intention, a game table that was big enough to hold any number of simultaneous projects and games. Mission accomplished there. I'd like to give a few shout outs here. First of all, to Mr. Shane Logan of Jamworks, also affiliated with Flying Pig Games, i.e., Mark Walker, of Old School Tactical fame. Additionally, Adam Starkweather, who probably needs no introduction. A number of fine games tucked under his belt. I'm giving a shout out to these fine gentlemen because they have elected to submit articles for the upcoming Hexes and Soldiers magazine. I've talked about this before. I will continue to talk about this until release. The magazine coincides unintentionally, as it were, with some numbers. Now, I don't typically like to pay too much attention to numbers. They don't really mean a whole hill of beans, but can't help but notice that, and it's been a long, hard road for the Hexes and Soldiers channel here on YouTube. I'm trucking along as best I can. Other channels seem to just garner loads and loads and loads of subscribers. Not my case, but I am thoroughly appreciative of each and every one of the now 500 plus subscribers that take time out of their day to listen to me carry on. That's very endearing. I do not take it for granted. You guys, again, are thoroughly appreciated. Also, I should say welcome to any new subscribers. I seem to get a few here and there. And the additional number that I have in mind is the now pushing 1,000 followers on the Hexes and Soldiers Facebook site. Thank you to you guys for that. So the numbers are out of the way. The Hexes and Soldiers magazine is just about done. Still have a few pages to fill in. That will ship to the same best value copy, which is in New York, and these are the same guys that did the Advanced Platoon Leader hard copies, limited edition copies of the game that I had available for a short amount of time. They did great work. I was happy with what they did. So I will be returning to them for the Hexes and Soldiers magazine, which will be glossy and wonderful and all of that. What else we got? Just got back from St. Louis, a little vacation. Saw some family, always good. And I did the Holy Trinity tour, which I always do when I go home. Oh, what in the hell is the Holy Trinity tour, Jason? That consists of Emo's Pizza, because I don't know of any other place pizza-wise that does it like they do. So got to hit that. In fact, hit it up twice. And Lion's Choice roast beef, the best damn roast beef, hands down, anywhere in the world. I'll take that to the bank. So ate there twice. Caught a preseason hockey game. And that was it. Very relaxing. Spent some time by the pool. But I left out the third part of the Trinity. So Emo's, Lion's Choice. What's the third part? The third part includes a game store, better known as Game Night. Every time I go home, I try and swing by there because they have always carried among all the family typical themed uh, games, the war games, the stuff that you and I play and enjoy. They've always stocked that stuff. Now I knew they had moved, and they had only moved right across the street essentially. So I saw the new store, thoroughly impressed. Um, Lots of room, lots of space, lots of stuff. And as I'm winding down from each aisle all the way to the back, I'm noticing a lack of the things that I come here for. And yeah, they don't carry war games as such anymore. They still carry the other stuff, oodles and noodles of that, but I guess it's the end of an era. No more war games. I noticed a copy of Hunt for Red October that I think somebody found in Grandma's basement and replasticed it and put it for sale on the shelf. If you look real hard, you can find it. And then let's see, a copy of Operation Mercury and something else. So 2 or 3 games, and it wasn't even worth the trip. So future trips to St. Louis no longer require a trip to game night as they refuse to carry the stuff I care about. And I almost said something to them like, "Hey, I only come to this store for blah 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 that you used to carry." But you know what? They're gonna look at me like, "Yeah," and that they don't care essentially, and they don't need to. I guess they're doing just fine selling the other stuff. Um, who am I to tell them what to sell in their store? So I just walked out, and that was that. So, but not all was lost. Um, with all the to do and hoopla about Hitler's Reich, the Mark McLaughlin game from GMT posted some things on the Hexes and Soldiers Facebook page about it. This all started, honestly. Again, my brother does that thing where he tries to break in once again to uh, territory that he had tread in earlier years via the cardboard. Had pre-ordered Hitler's Reich, opened it up, and he said the rule book was just completely out of whack. I thought, no, man, you're just out of the game, pun intended. Um, you're not used to one of these rule books. And sure enough, I noticed some other people posting things and stuff popping up. And yeah, the rule book for that game, I don't know what happened, but it's definitely out of whack. They have since addressed it to the best of their ability. I'm hoping this doesn't require a Hitler's Reich second edition that you are required to pay for. This is not something that is their fault. You should be required to pay for a new edition in order to get it right, but we'll see. But anyway, he did hand me down, said, I'm at my wits' end with this game, even with the errata and the now available examples of play, etc. He just had enough and passed it on to me, so we'll see what happens with that. I've also picked up, and I guess you could say I've moved on to the new acquisitions segment. Picked up Skies Above the Reich. Yet to crack that open. What else? Hatton and Flames, which I did an unboxing of. I've got that out on the game table currently. Secret Weapons of the Third Reich. I guess there's a kind of theme going on lately. Anything named Reich I've purchased. That's a little sad. Hitler's Reich, Skies Above the Reich, and Secret Weapons of the Third Reich. When I received Secret Weapons of the Third Reich and opened it up and read through the rule book, I don't know what I was expecting, but I guess I was expecting something a little more, um, not quite so. I don't want to say simple because it's not necessarily simple, but it just narrowly missed my wheelhouse, so we'll see what happens with that. And then, if any of you have watched the unboxing of Victory and Glory Napoleon, I am thoroughly frustrated and fed up with that game as well. It's a wonderful uh, package all the way around, but it is not as they advertised, and it does not play the way it should. It has major issues, primarily with the watering down of the thing and your strategy and tactical crossover. It uses battle maps for your tactical battles, or so I thought. No, those aren't included, although you can go to Board Game Geek and look at a picture of this game. And what does it show in the picture? Looks like some battle maps for you to have tactical battles on. Contacted them and they said, no, those things were never produced. So I put a nice little message underneath that picture that says, hey, these battle mats that are shown in the picture are not included. And that picture should be deleted, in my opinion. It's false advertising. The problem is not the battle mats, but that means the entire way the game plays is different, and it's junk. I'm sorry, but it is. It sucks. So that was disappointing, and I've since I was decided and made an attempt to house rule the thing and variate it to where it's playable and enjoyable. And what I've ended up doing is inadvertently created a possible new game, card game. I've got cards, homemade cards that the artwork I've hijacked from Battles of Napoleon, changed them to work for what I need them for. Uh, got some rules that I've twisted around from the Victory and Glory Napoleon PC game, and a few other odds and ends thrown in a pot. And I have had a lot of fun with this. I'm going to attempt to try to compile the thing in one palatable dose and put this in some way, shape, or form as available for you guys to play. I've dubbed it as a fidget spinner for wargamers. It's simple, it's quick, it's fun, and this is what I played when I was in St. Louis. So more about that later. Still working on the World War II German versus American combat game, which essentially is comprised of two 8.5 by 11 sheets. That's where everything takes place. No cards, not many counters other than for some informational purposes, and then a few sheets of charts and the rules. That is the proper war game I've been working on and intend to release at some point. But again, as I said, this Napoleonic game, card game that I've got that I've been playing quite a bit and very fond of, that may take the front burner here and combat, as I've come to call it. Might just have to take the back burner for a while. So that leaves, what does that leave? I'm waiting on Old School Tactical Ghost Front, which is a bulge expansion for Old School Tactical. Red Factories, I finally, after all this time, gave in and threw in my pre-order for that. ASL, MMP, enough said. The Hunted, which extends the wonderful Hunters series that began with the Hunters, followed by Silent Victory. Still waiting on that. And then still wavering, even though I pre-ordered it, may cancel. Still wavering on the Russian Campaign Designer Signature Edition. Huh? You can expect, as I've already written it, an article about such things in the upcoming Hexes and Soldiers magazine. Deluxe Designer Signature Redux editions of games seems to be the thing now. Games that were released back in the day, getting update after update after update and continuing to be re-released. I call it game flipping, hence the name of the article in Hexes and Soldiers magazine. So keep an eye out for that. Quite a common theme these days. What else? So yeah, that's what I'm waiting on, and I don't anticipate any bomb drops anytime soon as far as announcements or game releases. Um, Looking forward to the ASL Starter Kit PTO, Pacific Theater stuff, but haven't heard much about that. So that pretty much covers recent acquisitions, things that I'm waiting on. And then I saw something interesting on, I'm not the biggest Decision Games fan boy. I hate that expression, fanboy is not necessarily a bad thing. To be a fan of something to such an extent that you are a fanboy, don't know how that's a bad thing, but nevertheless, Decision Games, I'll just read it for you here. Let's start with the A list. And they say, first up is a Ziploc update of Olympic and Coronet. And then World War I Strategy and Tactics Quarterly number 2. That looks in depth at America and World War I. In June, they're going to release D-Day at Iwo Jima. That should be cool. That will be the fourth in their D-Day series, which includes Tarawa, Omaha, and the other one. And they have, let's see. Now, looking into 2019, you're like, what? 2019. No, that'll be here before you know it. Time flies. They're going to release the next GOSS game, Lucky Forward. And I posted something about this on the Hexes and Soldiers Facebook page. Lucky Forward does cover Patton's Lorraine campaign from September to December of 44. Why did this pique my interest? Because as if the Waktam Rhine game isn't big enough, this will link to it. So if you have a summer home that you can use to game in and just have enough space left over to go to the bathroom, that would be doable. They're going to do a Ziploc Cobra update for the 75th anniversary of the Normandy campaign, a boxed edition of Desert Fox Deluxe. See, there's already a Desert Fox, but you need the Deluxe, or do you? 2020. Do you know of any other game companies that do this? Project their releases that far out. That's interesting. It's not a bad thing. 2020. We have two big games planned for release. North Africa campaign, I've already mentioned again, and other venues. A new design based on the SPI Classic, hopefully more affordable and playable, I should say, with a staff card-driven system. Okay, so I guess there you go. Replacing the cumbersome logistics accounting system. So it sounds like it will be more playable. The second project is Axis Empire's expansion kit. For those of you that love all things Axis Empires. And they'll also be publishing Battle for Germany. Wait for it. Deluxe Edition. More game flipping. Then they say that's essentially it. So, and they have a pledge program. You can check that out on their site, Decision Games. It's just interesting that they list that. 2021, they say, for their game releases, it's up to you. I'm going to assume that means we will decide what is available, and that it's up to you is not the title of a game. Probably a safe assumption. That is Decision Games. GMT just did their recent monthly announcement, and steady as she goes, I think they added a fantasy game. I don't have a problem with that, but don't know that I will need it on my shelf or game table or shed or attic or basement. What else? MMP. M&P is really, I used to think ASL was their bread and butter, but I think that's their bread, and Dean Essig's work is their butter. So we still have A Victory Awaits, waiting to reach its numbers. Good Lord, we've got the Brazen Chariots Battalion Combat Series, and Ardiete, the Battle of Bir el Gubi, Libya, Tactical Combat Series coming out, and still waiting on Monty's Gamble. Been up there forever. Front Toward Enemy finally reached its pre-order. The Tactical Vietnam War game, 50 meters to a hex, 5 minutes to a turn. Finally reached its pre-order. Smolensk, Barbarossa Derailed, Operational Combat Series. I am a big fan of the Operational Combat Series system, but I think I don't want to say there's enough of these things, because I guess you can never have enough of a good thing, but I just stopped buying them. I mean, once you've played a few, the system's the same. It's just a different color, so to speak. So Rostov 41, Standard Combat Series, Race to the Dawn, Race for Bastogne, Grand Tactical Series. Now that no, we don't need another Bastogne game, but it's the Grand Tactical Series, and I'm a big fan of that. And I have to say, I'm curious to see how the Grand Tactical Series system handles a bulge game. So I may end up getting that. I don't know. It's kind of assuming it includes some smaller scenarios. Again, I don't have the time or patience anymore for gigantic games that I start and can never finish. Special Ops is out now. Avenge Pearl Harbor. I'm hoping an ASL Journal comes up soon. And that's it for M&P. I'll let you guys venture around other places. I recommend White Dog Games. Give them a look. There's always, of course, Lock and Load. Give them a look as well. High Flying Dice, they're doing good stuff. I'm not sure if Revolution Games or Worthington has done anything for us lately. Cue the song. What have you done for me lately? So, I think we'll wrap with that. And go back to the book. So what is this that I'm reading here? Again, this is Black Edelweiss, a memoir of combat and conscience by a soldier of the Waffen-SS. In the past, if I've brought up a book that usually relates in some way, shape, or form to a game that I talk about, this may or may not be the case moving forward with this Series 2 Hexes and Soldiers episodes. I will try to do so, make that the case, but it will not always be the case. There's just some good books out there that I want you guys to be aware of, and even if it doesn't relate to a game. And so that said, as I mentioned, Johann Voss is not the gentleman's real name. It's a pseudonym. And he served in the SS Gebirgsjäger Regiment 11 Reinhard Heydrich, which was part of the 6th SS Mountain Division Nord. Was written in English. The book is mainly an account of his combat service against the Soviets in northern Karelia and Finland during the Second World War, with a shorter section describing combat against American forces in the Volsches, you tell me, and the Saar-Moselle Triangle in 45. He also recalls his experiences of being a POW in the United States from 45 to 46, which is when he wrote this. And I was thoroughly impressed upon reading this. It hasn't aged, is what I'm trying to say. It's held up well over time. His writing does not include unnecessary, gratuitous violence. He describes things as needed when required. Nothing more, nothing less. That said, let's cut to another excerpt. So the excerpt that I read for you was from a chapter entitled "The 66th Parallel." Now, when the book begins, you follow him from his decision to join through training up to his going to the front, as it were. This excerpt that I'll read is from St. Nicholas Day, and it begins thusly: "A terrible bang jolted me from a deep sleep. I was on the upper bunk in our dugout. It was the 6th day of December in '43. Feeling a piercing pain, I realized I had bumped my forehead against a log ceiling. Above the bunk next to me, the roof had been ripped open. A big hole let in the dim light of a subarctic noon. A Russian anti-tank gun was blasting away on our position and had torn apart the thick layers of logs, stones, and dirt on the top of our bunker. The gun's reports were fast, dry, and hard, instantly followed by the impacts of the shells. Inside our bunker, the expended shell casings, jerked by the string from our machine gun emplacement, jangled their maddening alarm. Still numb, I jumped into my felt boots, getting ready to rush outside. The alarm stopped, and at the same moment, I heard our own machine gun opening fire. Then the Mungos on the other side began firing, sending over shell after shell that plastered the ground around us. The Alte, as he calls him, already in his parka, and with his helmet on, was grabbing his submachine gun with quick, measured movements. He stuffed his pockets full of hand grenades. "Folks, it's getting serious. Come on out, quick!" he shouted and dashed outside. Heinrich was right behind him, both on their way to the machine gun emplacement. I followed with the others, running along the ditch, always ducking from the mortar fire. Orders were unnecessary in a situation like this. Each knew his place. Mine was next to Heinrich as number 2 gunner. At our machine gun bunker, Balmer was blasting away in short bursts, swiveling the gun on its tripod mounting. The anti-tank gun was silent. It had disappeared behind its camouflage. The Russian Mungos went on firing. Ours had joined in too. We could see their rounds impact on the enemy's position. The roof of our emplacement had been hit by the Russian anti-tank gun, but neither bomber nor machine gun was harmed. Together with one of the 12th Company's machine guns, he repelled an assault of a Russian patrol to the left of our gun position. So what is going on here essentially is a series of alternating patrols. The Soviets go out on patrols, and then the Germans go out on patrols. Um, so that's what we're dealing with essentially. When Heinrich and I took over, we could see some white-clad figures withdrawing, every other second jumping up, running, quickly taking cover again in a deep trail they had flattened in the snow while stealthily creeping forward all night. 3 bundles remained lying in the snow, indistinct, not far from our barbed wire entanglement. The firing stopped for a while. The white patrol disappeared into a stand of spruce and birches. Quickly we changed the hot barrel, took another belt from the ammunition box, and loaded it into the breech of the gun. "Everyone all right here?" a voice behind us asked. I turned around. The officer on duty had entered our bunker. With him was Oberscharführer Shaper, our platoon leader. The two were in full gear, submachine guns across their chests, white-covered helmets on. They couldn't have been more different in appearance, though. The officer, Untersturmführer Mannhardt, was a platoon leader in the 12th Company of our regiment. I'd never really spoken to him. He was a handsome man, lean and young, about Philip's age. When he walked through the trenches, it was with a markedly springy gait. Now in the narrowness of the bunker, I saw his face close up and noticed under the rim of his helmet eyes that were full of willpower and resolution as they peered out through the embrasure. Shaper, on the other hand, was sturdily built, ruddy-faced, a man from a village in Lower Saxony. He clearly was another one of the old guard. He also had a remarkable gait that always reminded me of a farmer trudging in rubber boots across a rain-soaked field of sugar beets. "Yes, so far, Untersturmführer," the Altis said. Mannhardt was in a hurry, pressing on with questions. How many we had seen, how many casualties left in the field, what sort of equipment were they carrying, most importantly, where was the anti-tank gun? The Alte pointed to a spot directly across the hollow, right over there, just beside their machine gun bunker. "I've never seen that son of a bitch around here before. Can't be much of an emplacement. Guess they've done it overnight. It happened all of a sudden. Balmer here had them in his telescopic sight when they tore down the camouflage from the gun and started banging away." Mannhardt stepped up the rabbit-ear trench scope and searched the opposite hill for the gun. "They tried the same stunt with the 1st Battalion a few weeks ago," he said. "What do you think they're up to?" the Alta asks. Don't know yet. A probe, I guess. Whatever. I think they'll try again before long, and then I'm afraid your emplacement will be their first target. Listen, at the distance they'll blow the whole bunker away with that gun if you let 'em. Make sure they don't get another chance. You must silence that gun before it starts doing real harm. Don't let 'em out of your sight. I'll request special fire support from our Mongos. And with that he departed. We were waiting while the Alta remained glued to the scope, now and again traversing it slowly to the right and to the left. Heinrich peered over his sight. More than an hour passed in silence, tense and threatening. The three bundles in front of the wire remained still. Noon was over and it was getting dark again, as dark as it gets at this snow-covered latitude. The cold slowly crept up from the ground to my knees, despite my thick boots and the brushwood underneath. Heinrich took a breath, leaving the gun to me. No sooner had I left that, I saw their gun right across from us as it slowly appeared from behind a screen being torn down and then loomed over the parapet aimed at our firing position. There it is, the Alta and I yelled at the same time. Fire! And Alta yelled. The first burst of tracers arced over. I had the Russian piece firmly in my sight and kept the trigger handle tightly pressed. I could imagine the bullets cracking against the shield of their gun and rattling the nerves of the gunners. But penetrate their armor they did not even at the range of only 150 meters. Then came their response. The first round slammed into the roof of our emplacement, tearing away another part of it. The second round was too short. If the next one went through the embrasure, we'd have had it. Heinrich was back and took over, keeping the Russian gunners pinned down by long bursts of fire. Their third shot also missed, but the duel of life and death wasn't over yet. Then finally our mortars started firing. I saw a rapid sequence of impacts around our target, 4 at a time, another round and then more. The Alta kept watching through his telescope, getting more and more excited about our well-placed Mongol fire. They call I think they're artillery fire Mongos, I believe, if I remember right. Cease fire, Heinrich, he called suddenly. Don't see the gun anymore. I think it's busted. We had a break. We had no sooner changed the barrel, though, when Heinrich had discovered a second Russian patrol, quite distant yet, but coming from the same direction. He swung his gun around, aiming at the white shadows working their way forward in the twilight. Hold it, the Alta said. We'll get him at closer range. Suddenly he yelled, watch out! At the same time, the burp of a Russian submachine gun sounded right in front of us, followed by the Alta emptying a whole magazine of his submachine gun right above my head. One of the three Russians lying in front of our wire had crept forward, waited for his chance, and trying to accomplish what had gone wrong before, had leapt to his feet. The Alta had spotted him almost too late, but shot him just in time. The Russian soldier collapsed, his body twisting as one arm became caught in the barbed wire. Then he lay still, his arm remaining raised, as if in remonstration against his own useless act of bravery. At the same time, our defensive fire broke loose. Heinrich blasted away with his gun, and our mortars plastered the no man's land. The Ivans had advanced pretty far, but for all their bravery, their patrol had to fall back. All of a sudden, our mortars stopped firing. Hey, look, the Alta shouted. I think the 12th is going after him. I can't believe it. These devils. I jumped up and looked through the embrasure. I could see the shadows of our men dashing over the white treeless expanse at the left of our hill and in an oblique direction toward the patrol. They had come rather close and were already about to cut the Russian patrol in two. I heard Maynard's command loud and clear, ordering the men on his left flank to wheel around and block the Russians' withdrawal. All went very quickly then. Shooting and storming, they broke through the patrol in no time, herded the last of the Ivans together, and were already well on their way back with them before the Russian Mongos opened fire. Afterwards, the forest was as still and as dark as it had been in the morning. It was late afternoon, and I remained on guard for the next hour. That brings us to the third and final excerpt that I will read for you guys. This is from Combat Patrol. And it goes like this. I was torn from my thoughts when two officers accompanied by Shaper entered my emplacement. One of the two was Maynard's successor with the 12th Company down from the Junker School. Waffen-SS Officer Candidate School is what that is. Only recently, the other one I had recognized by the 3 silver pips and the 2 braids on his left collar. It was Hauptsturmführer Hansen, our battalion commander, whom I faced then for the first time. The battalionier, as we used to call him, was, from all I had heard of him, a highly respected, very popular commander. He was respected for his vigorous leadership and proven bravery, and popular for his friendly way with the men. Now I thought his appearance and manner met all the qualities I had heard of, but he struck me as young, much younger than I had thought. He accepted my report, saluted, and immediately stepped up to the telescope where he began searching the enemy's positions. From time to time he talked to the officer of the 12th, pointing some of the positions. Then, straightening up, he seemed to have confirmed his decision about a mission they apparently had discussed in detail before. The mission was to be started across the no man's land in front of us that same night. It was a combat patrol. Later, Shaper turned up to ask me to go out with the patrol and secure their left flank with my gun. Outside it was dark early in the morning of the day of our patrol. The air in the bunker was hot and loaded with the pungent smell of burning wood and glowing cigarettes, of leather and wet things. The men were standing close around the carbide lamps so that the room was darkened by their shadows. Tightly packed under the low ceiling in the cramped room, they wore white-covered helmets and had stowed away their equipment with belts and straps on the white anoraks. The men of the assault team carried as many hand grenades and as much ammunition for their automatic weapons as they could manage. The three of us, Bing, Stricker, and I, had slung ammunition belts over our shoulders. I was holding our MG-34 pressed to my body. I was my own #1 gunner this time. Silence had fallen on the room. All was set. The mission was clear. An assault group would breach the Russian positions opposite us, penetrate their bunker system, and return with prisoners before dawn. Now everyone was more or less occupied with keeping his uneasy feelings under control. I, for one, kept telling myself we are an excellent team, we have excellent leadership, it can be done if we are smart enough, don't worry, and for heaven's sake stay cool. I watched the stern, inscrutable faces of the men, which were occasionally illuminated by the glow of a cigarette. A group of 4 were standing by the exit, strangely separated, the hoods of their anoraks drawn over their helmets. They carried no weapons, but each had fastened to his chest several kilograms of explosives. They were a detachment from the regiment's penal platoon and were given the opportunity to redeem themselves in combat. These were men who had committed some infraction of military discipline, such as laxity while on guard duty, drunkenness, insubordination, or some offense in the rear, such as the misappropriation of government property or harassment of the population. Their mission was to pick up the mines and to make a path across our own mine belt and to clear the way for the demolition team in front of the enemy bunker line. At that moment I found their presence, their mission, and their unarmed status deeply disturbing, as one could sense the grim enforcement of military discipline. Their presence added to the gloom in the bunker. At a sight from their leader, a combat engineer sergeant, they left the bunker to begin their work. We stayed behind for what seemed to us another eternity. Our patrol leader looked at his watch. It's time, let's go. Relieved, we took up our gear and pushed to the exit. First the assault team, then us, the support element. Passing the stove, we flung our cigarettes into the fire and made for the trench. At the exit to the cleared path through the minefield stood the battalionier, making a remark now and then to a man he knew by name or just briefly lifting his hand in an informal salute. When I came by he gave me a smile, remembering perhaps our encounter that morning and our emplacement. The 3 of us reached our position unnoticed, and I fixed the gun in firing position behind a fallen trunk. To the left lay the bare expanse. In front, at a distance of about 70 meters, was the Russian main combat position. I could dimly recognize the dark rectangle of the embrasure of their machine gun emplacement in the snowbound bunker line I had had in my sight that morning. I adjusted my gun over the foresight. Wham! Wham! There were 2 flashes ahead to our right, directly in front of the enemy position. Wham! The 3rd charge went off. The assault team was jumping ahead towards the Russian ditch. A flare went up. Seconds later, the Russian machine gun burst into life. At the same moment, I sent half a belt with some tracers directly through the embrasure. The recoil of my gun hammered into my shoulder, and the bipod rattled from the force of the bursts. One fire silenced the Russian gun just in time for our engineers to dash through its fields of fire. More Russian flares soared up. Now the Russian machine gun fired again. After another burst from our gun, though our demolition team managed to throw a 3-kilo charge into the embrasure. A muffled detonation lifted the wooden structure. Our men jumped over the parapet and rolled up the trenches to the left and to the right. Some machine guns blazed and hand grenades blasted as they knocked out the two emplacements. Everything had happened in a few minutes, but the fighting continued in the Russian position. We constantly heard brief bursts of automatic weapons fire and imagined the hand-to-hand combat which was probably going on in the Russian position. Their mortars were sure to open up soon. Suddenly, the burps and explosions in the Russian position stopped. The scene was still again. I saw our team coming back, dim figures running back from the Russian bunker line and heading directly towards our position. They immediately came under fire from another machine gun. The Ivan somehow had managed to mount to the left of the demolished bunker. I threw myself around and aimed at the muzzle flash of the gun. The Russian gun had to be neutralized. Bing, lying beside me, fed another belt into the MG-34. Stricker rushed up with more tracer ammunition. We fired a few more bursts and the Russian gun stopped. Now it was high time to change our position after that most conspicuous show of our gun. Then we heard the first discharges of the Russian heavy mortars, a sequence of pop, pop, pop. Instinctively we counted each of them. Wham, wham, wham. After the first sheaf hit, we jumped up and took cover in two of the craters. The next discharges went off, and more of the shells crashed down around us. Then there were even more mortar rounds fired, and they began to merge into an indistinct thunder. We were lying stiff among the blasts. This barrage was the worst I had experienced until then. Round after round came down. I don't know how long it lasted. It seemed impossible that we would escape this inferno alive, or at least unhurt. And yet, lying there under the concentrated fire, our bodies pressed into the shallow craters, there was this desperate, irrepressible hope to be spared this time. For whatever we felt or hoped, we had to stay on to cover the retreat of our comrades. Last out, last in. Eventually, our 10.5 centimeter mountain howitzers made their entry and sent their rounds over to the Russian Mungo firing positions. Lifting our heads as the fire died down, we saw that so far the three of us were unhurt. In the silence that followed, another Russian flare went up. All was quiet. The assault group must be at home by now. Why didn't they give us the signal for our return? Since our departure, about half an hour had passed. Before long, it would be dawn. Suddenly, from behind, the messenger appeared and threw himself down beside me. The order was to stay on for another assault. We had lost our only prisoner through enemy fire. On the way back, the battalionier was determined to get the mission accomplished nevertheless. He sent them back again, promising massive fire support. The messenger had just left when the fire of our howitzers and Mungos opened up. We saw their flashing impacts on the Russian bunker line. Our assault team made for the gap in the minefield with quick, wide jumps. Our fire stopped as suddenly as it began. Then came the clatter of small arms fire in the Russian position, but not as much as before. Could we have caught the Ivans again by surprise? It wasn't long before we saw them return, alternately jumping, taking cover, firing back, and jumping again. The machine gun opposite us remained silent this time. Our gun on the right flank blazed away towards the bunker line. Our artillery had shifted their fire to the mortar emplacements. All the same, there they were again, the dreaded discharges of the Russian Mungos. Pop, pop, pop. The terrifying swish and blast of their shells that sent us down again on our bellies. This time, however, their fire went to the rear where they assumed the rest of our patrol was. It was dawn when the signal came for us to return. Still out on the expanse of wide open terrain, we were all fairly visible by now. We had to cross quite a stretch to get back to the safety of our ditch. I forget how we finally made it. I only remember that the Mungo fire lasted as long as we were out in the open and that our howitzers did the best to hold down the enemy fire. Back in the ditch and inhaling deeply on our first cigarettes, the three of us triumphed out of a sense of sheer survival rather than because of the mission's outcome, which we didn't know at that moment anyway. There was that surge of intense happiness, a temporary and an utterly false feeling of physical integrity. All of this was the reverse of that fear of death we had been through during the last 2 hours. That is an excerpt from Combat Patrol From the book Black Edelweiss, A Memoir of Combat and Conscience by a Soldier of the Waffen SS by Mr. Johann Voss. You can get this book on Amazon. If I can think of it, I'll put a link up. And this is through they call it Aberjona Press. So pick this book up. As I said, there's a great introduction which compares this to other memoirs of a similar ilk. It talks of how he came to join training and then his initial experiences beginning with and through what he had to deal with in combat. It's not a long book, just under 200 pages, but I recommend it. Hope you guys enjoyed that. If you are interested in games that deal, even if slightly indirectly, with the subject, you have a few options. Beginning with Jatko Sota, which is an expansion for Advanced Squad Leader. This is through Critical Hit. Be warned, buy at your own risk. Just about everything I've bought through Critical Hit has a problem of some sort. So yeah, what do you get? You get a 12-page historical background booklet, 1 page of Chapter H notes, 36 unmounted counters, including a major Tapio and Ace scenarios. 6 of the scenarios are Finnish-Russian, 1 German-Russian, and 1 Finnish-German. So yeah, you've got that as an option. Then you have something called Karelia 44, published through MMP. Came out in 2011. Let's see. This is, so whereas Jatko Sota is tactical, this would be operational level game that focuses on the last major campaign of the Russo-Finnish continuation war. Stavka planned an offensive during the summer of 44 to coincide with the Normandy landings. The objective was to force Finland out of the war. Towards this end, the Soviets amassed 2 ground armies, 1 air army, and an impressive amount of artillery. Confident after a series of victories against the Germans, the Red Army attacked in Karelia on 9th of June of 44. The attack began with an overwhelming artillery barrage, second only to the Oder crossings in intensity. Finnish lines were pushed back and then breached. The race for Viipuri-Viborg was on. The capture of this city would open the road to Helsinki. The game features a unique boss point system which precludes either player from knowing how long the game will last. Sounds cool. For the Russian player, this represents the gun to his head of an unhappy dictator who will gladly send you to a gulag forever if you fail in your goals. For the Finns, you know that you are under strength, and the Russians will destroy you if given enough time, but you need to hang on for dear life in order to be in the best possible position when the boss patience runs out. Players will find 2 very different armies to command. The Russians are the proverbial 500-pound gorilla, but one that takes time to prepare big operations and isn't fleet of foot enough to do small-scale attacks. The Finns have splendid artillery and are designed for a mobile defense, which, if done right, will leave the Russians flailing in the air. You have 3 defensive lines to use and an innovative ghost unit feature that allows your thin ranks to try to hang on to them. Please note, this is not the Winter War of 1939. No, indeed. This is a well-developed late war Russian army, not the hapless troops of the opening years of the war. The Finns need to be on their toes to stand a chance. And it says this is the 14th game in the award-winning Standard Combat series, emphasizing easy-to-play rules. Essentially, it's a watered-down OCS system. So, looks like 280 counters, 3 scenarios, rules, etc. And we have, what else do we have? We have something called... This is from the finished trilogy. This is Volume 2, 1939 to 45, the continuation war, 41 to 44. This is a beast. Piqued my interest when it came out, but I never picked it up. As I said, it's a beast. I don't know, even if I got this to the table, if I would play it. From Miku Games, Germany launched their Operation Barbarossa against the Soviet Union in June 22nd of 41. Finland, now co-belligerent with Germany, took the opportunity to take back the areas lost to the Soviet Union as part of the bitter Winter War peace terms. The almost 200,000 men strong German army, a Norwegian, operating in northern Finland as part of Hitler's Operation Plan Barbarossa. Finland and Germany are fighting two separate wars against the same enemy. Finnish units reached their objectives in late December 41. And says in the summer of 44, the Soviet Red Army launched a major offensive of the Karelian Isthmus after the withdrawal of the German Heeresgruppe Nord from the Leningrad area. This time the Finnish units couldn't hold back the thrust, and Vyborg was lost and the situation critical. The largest battle in northern Europe took place in Tali and Hantala, where German Stukas supported the Finnish units. Like a miracle, the Finns and Germans managed to halt the Soviet onslaught, and because Stalin was eager to reach Berlin before the Americans, he decided to withdraw a number of units from the Finnish front, thus saving Finland. Let's see, the game, as I said, is the second in a series of 3. And it is the largest of the 3. Now, the Germans make an entrance with a wide variety of units and special rules. The Soviet side gets the Guards units as well as numerous new air unit types. Let's see, the Grand Campaign can take up to 155 turns. Yeah, that's too much for me. Relax. In the middle of the campaign, approximately from January 42 to June 44, there will be a special feature called the Position War or Entrenchment War, which will speed up play considerably. Well, I hope so. Life is short. There are also 2 shorter scenarios included. That suits well for introduction. 12 counter sheets, for the love of God. The map will be 39 by 55 inches in 4 pieces, 48 pages of rules. So if you want to blow it out, there you go. That's pretty extensive. Ice cream man drives by. So yeah, there's your options. There may be more, but that's all I'm going to deal with in this show. And that about sums it up for this segment. So this has been Hex and Soldiers Show, Series 2, Episode 1. My intention is to do more of the same. I want to do more readings from things I want to share with you guys. I want to explore games we've yet to explore. And I want to throw in all the usual odds and ends and news, views, and reviews as well. So before I go, I want to share with you a recipe of mine. This take this as you will. Call it the Wargamer on the Go recipe, or TCB, taking care of business. Why else would I call it TCB? Tomatoes, corn, and beans. So get a pot. Get a can of diced tomatoes, or 2 cans. Get a can or 2 of corn, and get a can or 2 of some good beans. Dump it all together, heat it up, dinner. How hard is that? TCB. That's what I'll be having as soon as this show ends. Anything else? I think that about cuts it. So I'll be talking to you guys next time. Thanks for listening, and keep gaming.
pasture like sun lays me down. With my mind she runs throughout the night. No need to fight, never a frown, with golden brown. Every time, just like the last, on her ship, tied to the mast, to distant lands, takes both my hands, never a frown, with golden brown. Golden brown, fine a temptress, through the ages she's heading west. From far away, stays for a day, never a frown, with golden